Hey guys, welcome back. Let's do my July wrap up and talk about the 13 books that I read during the month of July. So here are my statistics. Like I said, I read 13 books, which is my best month so far as number of books read. However, they were in general quite a bit shorter than what I have been reading so far this year. So I guess that's why I was able to fit so many in. Now, because I read so many books this month, it might be a little hard for me to remember all of them. So bear with me. So first up, I read This Inevitable Ruin, which is the 7th book in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. I really loved this book. Just like the rest of the series, it has gotten so good. I actually started rereading or re-listening to the first book. I wanted to see, like, do I still think it's like a 4.5, or is it a 5? And honestly, I still stand by that 4.5 star rating that I gave it, because I do see where it just still has a lot more of the video game things, and I still don't think that that's my favorite part. My favorite part has been the character development. And in book 7, they are on the 9th floor, which means that they are doing faction wars. So faction wars is where all of these other governments like send this group in, and they basically have a game of war for fun. And so they send soldiers, and they're battling and trying to capture each other's castle. And basically it's like last man standing at the end wins. Book 7 is nonstop action from the very beginning of the book to the very end, because they are at war. They're having battles. They're trying to do these like covert missions and stuff. And my absolute favorite part of this one, we've been following this like story thread through Carl from book 3. In book 3, he gets this prize. And there's a reason that one is called the Dungeon Anarchist Cookbook. And this book that he gets, we're following a storyline that has to do with that and people that have gotten this book in the past. And in this book 7, we actually meet some of the people that have had that book in the past. I loved seeing those characters and seeing what they did after they left the dungeon, and talking about some of the people that have written in this book that you have gotten little tidbits from as the series has gone on, and then you find out what has happened to them, or they're in book 7 and they're helping Carl and Donut. And I cannot wait until book 8 comes out. I don't know that I can wait another year to know what happens next. Next up, I read Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? And this was my book to cover my Buzzword-a-thon challenge. I needed to have punctuation in the title, and then also for the picture challenge, I needed to have some kind of technology. And so this is an Android, and so that covered both of those prompts. And this also satisfied the July prompt for my year in audio reading, year long reading challenge thing, because I think it was a book published before I was born. So if you have never read this is the book that the Blade Runner movies are based on. We are following a bounty hunter, Rick Deckard, who hunts androids, because androids have gotten so advanced that they can like blend in with humans, but they lack empathy. And so he gives them this test to determine if they are in fact humans or if they're androids, because they are not allowed on Earth. Things have gotten really bad on Earth, world wars. There's like this toxic like dust that covers the planet now. Animals are very scarce, and they are very revered now. So like you have to have an animal, and in this one, he and his wife, they have an electric sheep, but he spends the entire book trying to get a real animal. So he gets the bounty for a group of new androids that are even more realistic than the previous models. And so we're basically along for the ride as he goes and interviews these androids. They might be people, that might be androids. He's like interviewing them to try to find out if they are in fact androids. It was okay. I don't know. Maybe it was because I read it after This Inevitable Ruin. And it took me a while to get into it. And I don't know. I ended up giving it 3 stars. I think it's fine. I think it's a fine book. And I do think it raises some interesting conversations about ethics and things like that. And also he kind of is questioning whether or not the androids deserve to live in a way. So that part was kind of interesting to me. I guess some of it may be that the book is a little older. I mean, the movies came out in the 80s, but the book was written in the 60s. And so I think the writing style could have been better, and I think that maybe that would have helped. Also, I think maybe it kind of jumped a little bit at times. So sometimes it was a little bit strange and hard to follow, like the thought process kind of jumping. I just know that it took me a while to get interested in it. Even though it was a short book, it actually took me longer than I thought it should to read it. So anyways, that was that. Then I read 8 books during the Summer Ween readathon. I read The Mist, which I think I rated 4 stars. This one is a novella by Stephen King. The main character, his son, and his neighbor, there's been a storm, a really big storm that came through. They are going to go into town to get supplies, but there is this weird fog that's rolling in. David realizes that there's like something strange about the fog. It just seems like there's some sort of like luminescence about it, and he talks about how it's like a perfectly straight edge when the fog is coming in. Well, they are in the supermarket or whatever when the fog finally gets to the store. They quickly realize that there are things out in the mist, possibly things that came from a nearby military base where they might have been doing some experiments maybe they shouldn't have been doing. I gave this 4 stars because I felt like I just wanted more. If this was a full-length novel and it went into details about like where the mist came from, where the things in the mist came from, like that whole thing, and like maybe a little bit of we've got to go into this military base and like stop them from releasing these things out into the world kind of thing, I feel like that would be a 5-star book for me. But because it is so short and you barely really get glimpses of the creatures in the mist, I think it's a 4-star for me. I just wanted more of it. I do think that the book has a better ending than the movie. So if you've ever seen the movie and you absolutely hated the ending, like I did, the book has a much better ending. It is an ambiguous ending, which Stephen King does quite a lot, I feel like. But it's ambiguous in a way where it's like you could at least imagine that maybe it was a happy ending. You could imagine a sad or devastating or totally, maybe you enjoyed the movie ending as traumatic as it was. Maybe you could picture that ending. But anyways, I really enjoyed it and gave it a 4 star. I also read What Moves the Dead. It is a retelling of the House of Usher. The main character gets a letter from her friend who has this like mysterious illness, and so They go to their house, their like manor or whatever, and they're trying to, you know, check in on her, see what's going on. And she's like wasting away, like literally like wasting away. And the brother is worried about her. At the same time, there are animals like rabbits that are acting very strange. T. Kingfisher has a thing about like fungus and stuff like that. So it was a little bit icky. It was creepy. I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. I also read Stranger Danger. This is one that I picked up from Books A Million that was on sale. This is a thriller. It's about 3 kids that are going to study like for their finals. And so they're going to like rent this cabin, no internet, no cell phones, the whole 9 yards. Well, one of the 3 girls, like the main character, is being stalked. They know something about her, and they're threatening to like expose her secrets. I'm going to give you spoilers for this one. I don't know that you would enjoy this one. If you think that you might want to read it, just mute me because I'm about to tell you all about it. In this one, the 3 kids, of course, you know, the girl's being stalked. So once they get to this house, like things are going on, right? Of the 3 kids, one of them is a boy and one of them is a girl. Those 2 are dating. And then they have the 3rd friend who is also a girl and is kind of like the main character that we're following. Well, the book sets it up so that you think that the friend and the boyfriend are like seeing each other behind the girlfriend's back. I don't remember anybody's name, so there are also flashbacks to like the school year, I guess, that they've gone through, and you are reading from another person's point of view, and that person is being bullied by our 3 characters. I pretty quickly picked up on the fact that it was a teacher, even though I did kind of second guess myself a little bit at times. But yes, these 3 people bullied a teacher so bad that she ended up having to leave the school. And yes, this said teacher is the person that is stalking her, and like, you know, it sets up a bear trap that one of the girls steps in. Anyways, that was not the issue that I had with this book. The issue that I had with this book is the girl is not having a relationship with her friend's boyfriend. The girl is having a relationship with her teacher. I hate that. No. Continuing on with the story, it turns out that the teacher in question was a nurse at the friend that was the girlfriend, her school. She was being bullied by some of the other kids because of her weight, and the nurse told her to lose weight. Therefore, this girl started having an eating disorder, and that's kind of been a thing in this book. So they bullied her because the teacher is apparently overweight. So, I mean, I don't know if she just wasn't at the time where she told the girl to lose weight, or if she was saying, hey, just, you know, I've been where you are, lose weight. I don't know. I don't know why she said that. I guess it was because they could make this book. Regardless, at the very, very end of the book, you then find out that the boy in this trio of friends is the son of the teacher that they bullied until she left the school. And he's been helping her to like set up these pranks or whatever on his girlfriend and friend. And again, that was not my biggest issue with this book. The biggest issue that I had with this book is you go through this whole thing and it's talking about the bullying, and yes, bullying is bad. Okay. There is a note here at the end where it's talking about bullying. That I talked to a former teacher who had been bullied by her students. The little girl being bullied and then in turn bullying, and who is the victim and who's the perpetrator, blah, blah, blah. Talking about bullying. Visit this website if you're being bullied. And then talking about the victims of bullying. Where is the note in here where it tells people what to do if they have a teacher that manipulates them into having an inappropriate relationship. Where's the note in here where it talks about like what to do if you're being abused by a teacher? That's not in here. Like, you're gonna put a note in here about not bullying and what to do if you're being bullied or if somebody you know is being bullied, but there is absolutely nothing in here about what to do if your teacher seduces you into an inappropriate relationship. No. So, however, putting that aside and just judging it based off of the story and the little twist or whatever, I say 2.5 stars, but of course I round up on Goodreads, so I rounded it up to 3 stars, but I wouldn't recommend reading it personally. I read Home is Where the Bodies Are, and this one, you have, again, 3, but this time it's siblings. You have 3 siblings that have come together because their mother's just passed away, and they're kind of, gonna like go through her things and all. Well, they find an old home video because the mother had a habit of like recording them or whatever. Well, in the home video, they witness their parents committing a crime. Someone that Summer went missing, and it seems like her parents had something to do with that. Their parents, the 3, it's 2 sisters and a brother, that their parents had something to do with that. And so this kind of sends them on an investigation into what really happened and, who their parents are. Their dad has been missing. He just like randomly walked out at one point, and maybe it had something to do with this. And so they're going to try to figure all of that out. I did really enjoy this one. It was a quick read for me because I was interested in it. I think once it got to the ending and it got to the reveal, I didn't catch the reveal too soon before it happened, although I kind of wasn't surprised that it was who it was. I didn't like call it way early or anything like that. So it did, I think, have a decent twist. However, once it got to there and you realized who it was, it just kind of seemed a little bit rushed. I don't know. I felt like maybe there could have been a little bit more with the ending of, like once you find out who did it, and it's like, well, what are they going to do now that we know who it is? And it just kind of seemed to like wrap up very suddenly at the end. So I did give it a 4-star rating. I also read Elevation by Stephen King. This is another novella. I read this one because I think I had to read something that had been on my TBR for like a year or more, and I don't really have very many horror books, period, let alone one that I've had for more than a year. So in this one, there is a man who is losing weight. He's stepping on the scale, and the number is going down, although he still looks the exact same. And the odd thing about it is, even if he like fills up his pockets with heavy things and stuff like that, he still weighs the exact same. And that number is very steadily going down. And so he knows that at some point, if nothing changes, he's going to get to a point where his body weight reads 0. And while this is happening, there is a lesbian couple that has moved into town. It's a small town, apparently, a small southern stuck in their ways town, which is a stereotype that living in a small southern town, I realize some people may have these views, but I still think it's a little bit stereotypical because not everybody is unaccepting in a small town. So for that reason, I don't even remember. I think I might have rated this 3 stars, which is unusual for me for a Stephen King. The writing wasn't bad, but the characters felt like caricatures, if that makes sense. Everybody in the town was just so horrible to this couple. They're trying to run this restaurant. And of course, because everybody is so horrible, of the 2 women, one of them is like very shy, soft-spoken. And then the other one is just very like, she's a bitch. She's a bitch to everybody. And they're neighbors with this guy. And in the beginning, it starts out with them like arguing because they take their dogs for walks and the dog poops in his yard. And he's just like, hey, just clean it up. That's all I ask, which I felt like was a very, normal thing to ask for. But she like flew off the handle because he like took a picture and was like, see, I just, clean it up, please. And she just flew off the handle. But anyways, so he does in the book, he's trying to become friends with them. I guess he just takes that as what he thinks is going to be like his last act on earth or whatever. He just wants for them to know that there are friendly people in his town, I guess. I don't know. But like I said, the characters felt very flat and like I said, like caricatures. And I mean, I don't know, maybe he meant to write it like that. I don't know. But I did give this one 3 stars. Again, very ambiguous, open ending. It didn't really have an ending, which in this case I think works. In that same vlog, I read, I think it's The House. I don't know. I should have looked before I sat down to record. This I listened to as an audiobook. It might have been young adult. I don't know. Sometimes it's hard to tell on the Libby app. It's, I think, a middle grades book, actually. It was very short. I listened to it one evening, cooking supper, start to finish. There is this, like, haunted house, and if you can stay an hour, you, like, win the challenge or whatever. I don't really remember too much of it. But anyways, there is this group of three friends that decide they get all of this, like, paranormal investigation equipment and stuff, and they go in and they're going to actually see if this place is haunted. So they get all of this evidence or whatever, and they end up finding out the secret of the house. It wasn't super scary, so if you have like maybe upper elementary aged kids, teenagers is probably gonna actually be too juvenile for them, but I don't know. You might want to read it with your kids. Anyways, it was spooky, but at the same time, I don't know, it almost gave me like Boxcar Children vibes, like that wholesome vibe that you get from like Boxcar Children books. So I don't know, if your kids like spooky, you might want to give it a try. It was a cute little story. I liked it. And then I read this book. I don't even remember the name of this book. This book was awful. This book was just so poorly written. And I'm just going to stick up some screenshots of what some of these things look like some of the writing in this book, what it looked like. Okay, this was like some of the cringiest amateur writing I have ever read. There was a thing on there that said that this author was a bestseller. They wrote something that was a bestseller that they wrote even before this book. I'm not calling them a liar, but I don't get it. I don't get it. But anyways, so yeah, I gave this book 1 star. I pushed myself through to read this one because I wanted to complete my whole little bingo board for Summerween. So I forced myself to finish it. This is another one that, according to like the little thing on Kindle, I should have been able to read in like 3 hours, and it took me like 3 days. But anyways, it was bad. It was very bad. For the whole entire rant, you can go check out my Summerween vlog because I did, in fact, rant about it a lot. I'm missing one. What am I missing? Okay, I remember. It was The Night Parade. And I gave that one 5 stars. So that's crazy that I forgot that one. In this one, they've basically had like this plague type thing that has infected people, and the story is kind of written almost in like a dual timeline. So you start out with this father and daughter, and they're like on the run, right? And through kind of like flashbacks, you get the story of why they're on the run and what's happening. And so this illness has struck, and it started out like the birds started going missing, and then, you know, people were getting really like paranoid, they were getting violent, and they would die. And it's very very aggressive, and it turns out that this man is on the run because his daughter is immune. So they're going to try to create a cure, but this man has a reason to distrust these people, and he does not want to subject his daughter to that. So they're on the run from this. I really enjoyed this one. Like I said, I gave it 5 stars. It had the kind of ending, again, that's just, it's going to stick with you. It was, I guess, a little bit ambiguous. Like, you know that the story for some of these characters is going to continue, but you don't really know what exactly they're going to do. Then I picked 3 books from my 25 in 25 bingo board that I put in my reading journal. I read Impossible Creatures. This is another middle grade fantasy, I believe. I started the audiobook in the car with the boys, but they weren't like super invested, so I did finish it by myself. But I thought it was very good. It was cute. So the little boy in here, Christopher, animals like follow him around, and he doesn't really know why until he has to stay with his grandfather. And it turns out that he is this like guardian of the archipelago, which an archipelago is a group of islands. But this place existed in the world, but because magical creatures and things like that exist here, it was like basically hidden from the rest of the world. So the only way to enter it is through like these portals, basically. And so there is like a little pool where his grandfather lives, and that is what the guardians protect. And something is wrong. Something is wrong with the magic. The other character that we're following is Mal, and she is running from someone that is trying to kill her. And the two of them, their paths cross, and they decide to go on a journey to try to figure out what is wrong with the magic. And they do, in fact, find out what is wrong. But they kind of have to go through these trials first to get the information and to go to where they need to go to figure out what's going on and to stop it. They kind of have to go through these trials. So in a way, it almost kind of gives like the Percy Jackson books. It kind of gives those vibes, the way that the friend group has to go and survive these different obstacles and things first. It's not necessarily based on any mythology though, so that part is different, but it does have different magical creatures, and there's even a bestiary at the end, which I thought was really cute. So it talks about the different like magical creatures that you read about in the book. The second book in this series is coming out soon, I think. Like sometime this year. I might get it just so that I know what happens. I do think I gave this 4 stars, I think. It definitely was not the same level of epicness, I guess you would say, as the Percy Jackson series. That series I would give 5 stars to. This one seemed a little bit less than that one, less stakes, less, it was like a little bit more watered down maybe, I don't know, but it was still very good. So if you have kids and you like to read with them, this would definitely be a good choice. But warning, there is like death in this. Just be aware of that if you are going to read it with kids. And then I read the Mordant's Need duology. I don't know if maybe this was just one book that was eventually just split into two, because literally this starts with chapter 1, and when this book ends, this book picks up like with the next chapter. This is part 1 and 2. This is part 3 and 4. So it might have only been one book at one point in time. Regardless, I read The Mirror of Her Dreams and A Man Rides Through. This is an 80s fantasy story about a girl, Teresa, who basically suffers from PTSD. She has a abusive and negligent father and mother. From that, she is basically like a shell of a person. She just exists. And she has decorated her apartment with mirrors. And it says in there that it's not so that she can see herself. It's so that she can know that she's still there. She's not disappearing. And that's kind of a theme throughout the books, is that she feels like she could just disappear. And then you have Garrison, who is in training to be a imager. And so the way that like the magic system in this world works is they can translate things through mirrors. So they can either bring things out of mirrors or put things through mirrors. And it is all based on like how the mirrors are made. So he is supposed to be going to get this champion who is like this soldier type person, and instead he goes to Teresa's apartment and he ends up bringing her back. And so there is all of this stuff going on in the background. The king seems to be like going a little bit senile and acts like he doesn't care, even though apparently there is a rogue imager somewhere that's bringing like monsters and things into the world. And Garrison and Teresa are trying to figure out who it is and putting a stop to it. Now, she's basically been kind of thrust into this, and really and truly Garrison has too. And you follow along with them as they discover who is truly, behind all of this. And then also they are discovering that they actually have magical abilities past, what anybody else has. And they will use that to save the kingdom. So I talk a lot more about it, a lot more in depth, probably with some spoilers. If you do want to read it, you might be aware of that in my bingo vlog that I just filmed. So if you want to know more about it, you can check there. So anyways, that is it. That's everything I read during the month of July. And I hope that I have just as many books in the month of August. Off to a little bit of a slow start. I've read 2 books so far this month, I think. So off to a little bit of a slower start, but hopefully we'll get there by the end. So anyways, that is it for now. I will see you next time. Bye.